The diagram shows the position of each of the three buildings in a town. The bearing of the hospital from the art gallery is 72 degrees. The cinema is due east of the hospital. Wherever you see east, remember that east is associated with 90 degrees from north. North is always going up, if you can see. So we know that east is going to be in this direction. We know west is going to be in this direction at any point in time, and south is going to be over here somewhere, right? So depending wherever you're going, we can at every single dot we can create a bearing. We can create east, west, and south. Every single dot. We've got west, east, and south. West, north, east, and south. The distance from the hospital to the art gallery is equal to the distance from the hospital to the cinema. They've given us this using lines. So these are, again, this is an isosceles triangle that we're dealing with. So therefore we can see that the interior angles opposite equal sides basically of an isosceles triangle are equal. So that's an isosceles triangle that we have over there. The diagram shows the position of each of the three buildings, and we know that's art gallery, hospital, and cinema. The bearing, remember, bearings always start from north and works in a clockwise direction. So we start from north and you work in a clockwise direction every single time if you need to work it out. The bearing of the hospital from the art gallery is 72 degrees. So from the hospital, the bearing of the hospital from the art gallery is 72 degrees. You can see if you're going to go in this direction over here, it's going to be 72 degrees. We can see that there. The distance, the cinema is due east, so that's 90 degrees. That's over here of the hospital. And the distance from the hospital to the art gallery is equal to the distance. So work out the bearing, it says now. Work out the bearing of the cinema from the art gallery. All right, so we got to go from the art gallery to the cinema. Okay, so let's have a look at how we're going to do this. We got all of that information in our mind whenever we think about bearings, and we end up with a question that looks like this. Okay, so let's have a look at this here. We're going to find out what is the bearing from the cinema to the art galleries. Because we're starting at the cinema, start off by placing your four coordinates at your cinema. So you know that's your focus point. Put your north, your south, your east, and your west. And now in a clockwise direction, move from north so you can highlight what the bearing should look like. And that's what you want to find. You want to find out what is that amount over there. Okay. Now if I break up this into 90 degrees, I know that this is 90 degrees and this is 90 degrees. And I'm going to call this angle theta. That's the only thing I don't know. So how do I find angle theta? And once I do, all I have to do is add it to the 90 at the top, the 90 at the bottom, and I will have this big reflex angle. All right, and that's your bearing. So we want to work out what the bearing is. Looking at the information that we have, I can see that we have parallel lines. And if we have parallel lines, we can bring in our co-interior angles, we can bring in our corresponding angles if we need it at any point in time. I can see that this line over here would be also parallel to my line that I've created here. So if I created this line here, it would also be parallel to that. That means that this whole angle over here would be equal to theta using alternate angles in the Z shape. Okay, so we're kind of brainstorming through all the possibilities for now. And if this angle is 72 degrees, we can also then find the next angle. So let's go on an angle trip. Okay, we're going to first find out this angle here, and let's call it H1. And then let's call this angle H2. So in order to find angle H1, the first thing we got to do is the following. We can see that 72 degrees plus H1 is equal to 180 degrees, and the reason is co-interior angles and parallel lines, right? Don't forget to put parallel lines. So 72 degrees plus H1, angle H1 equals, using parallel lines, there's your U shape, So you can find h1 by minusing it from 180. 180 minus 72 comes to 108 degrees. So angle h1 would be 108 degrees. We then have 90 degrees on this side, and we want to find out h2, and we can see that angles around a point form a revolution. So h2, h1 plus h2 plus 90 will equal 360 degrees. And from this, I know what h1 is. I just calculated it to be 108 degrees. So that gives me enough information to find h2. And once I found h2, I can then use angles in a triangle and add it up, which adds up to 180. Take 180 minus this angle and divide it by 2, which will give me this angle. And once I have this angle, I can then add it to 72 to get that alternate angle, which is what I wanted initially. Or I can minus it from 90 and I can get this angle as well. So basically saying that in order to get my angle theta, let me just zoom out from here. So in order to get my angle theta, this angle here, I need to find out what is this angle over here. Let's call it alpha. Okay, let's call it alpha. So we're going to find alpha. And that's what we're doing now. We're finding alpha. Okay, once we find alpha, then we can find theta. So here we go. In the triangle, we're going to find h2 now. We're busy finding h2, which is over here. Let me just neaten this up a bit. h2 is here, h1 was there. 360 minus 108 minus 90. So 360 minus 108 comes to, so you got 260 minus 8, 252. 252 minus 90 is minus, it's 162. So 162 degrees would be your angle h2. So now I have h2, which is 162 degrees. I can now say, okay, angles in a triangle. So I've calculated this now to be 162. And I know this is 108. And just make sure that they add up to 360. Yep, they do. So therefore, looking at the next part, this was angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. Now, angles in a triangle, sorry, that was angles around a point. The next one's angles in a triangle. Angles around a point equals 180 degrees. The next one is angles in a triangle equals 180 degrees. And now we're going to get alpha. So alpha plus 162 in the triangle equals 180 degrees, which is that triangle over there. So you got alpha 162. For this one here, the previous one, we had angles around a point. We had 3 lines here, and that's how we got to h2. And in the first one, we had the U shape. And that's how we got to h1. Now that we have this, we can see that 2 alphas will equal 1 plus 162 will equal that. And 180 minus 162, we have to minus it on the right hand side, will become 18 degrees. If I divide both sides by 2, I get alpha is equal to 9 degrees. So I know now that alpha is equal to 9 degrees. And if I look at this section over here, and I know that this is now 9 degrees, this is 90 degrees. So this has to be 90 minus 9, which is 81 degrees. So therefore, if this is 81 degrees and this over here is 90 plus 90, which is 180, then I can work out my bearing. So now I'm going to say, okay, well, finding theta is equal to 81 degrees. How did I do that? I took 90 degrees minus 9 degrees from there, and I got 81 degrees. Therefore, my bearing. Now, with regards to the reasons, we're looking at more the calculation of it. Okay, there's no particular mention of giving a reason. I've just given the reasons anyway, which has taken up a lot of time. So you can decide if you want to do that or not. Bearings. Okay, bearing is going to be from the cinema to the art gallery in this motion over here, right? In this motion over here would be 180 plus 81. And that becomes 261 degrees. And that's the final answer, and that's my answer. So therefore, work out the bearing from the cinema to art gallery. We got 261 degrees. Our main idea behind this, in simple terms, was to first calculate the 9 degrees, step A, and step B to calculate the 81 degrees. Okay, but in order to get A, we had to go through the first step of finding 162 and 108 using the 72 degrees in some way or the other.